I wanted to ask that too, since you're going to go ahead and go into it. How, like, I know you said you bought it. How were you able to scale it up like you did? Like, what were some steps you took to, make it grow as much as it did in the time period that it did?
Yeah. No, that's a great point. So I bought it officially in August of 2020. Mm-hmm. So I'd been working in it for a couple of years before that. That's kind of the CEO, if you will, of a very small business managing about 150 units.
Yeah.
And so one of the things, there was just a lot of clunkiness in terms of the operation. It was very focused on one individual, the manager, and everything kind of funneled through them. So one of the first things we tried to do was to try to break that up. These are this person's responsibilities. These are this person's responsibilities. These are this person's responsibilities. And I think we added a person around that time for that manager to have an assistant to try to help clearly define some of those roles, so that not everything had to run through one person.
One person, yeah.
We implemented regular weekly meetings where we took note of all of our KPIs, so key performance indicators, for those who may not know that term. And what else? We didn't really do any marketing at the time because we were still trying to basically clean up internally.
Right.
And so the way I try to explain it to people, especially anybody in kind of a service business, particularly reoccurring service business such as property management, you want to get people on your business Ferris wheel. Or no, Ferris wheel. What's the one with the horses?
Merry-go-round. Merry-go-round. Yeah.
That's right. It's an official business term. Merry-go-round. So you want them on your merry-go-round, and basically, we had to build the merry-go-round first because we didn't really have it. People were just kind of aimlessly walking around in a circle in our business, and we were like, no, we need to make this into a machine. So that was what we did the first year, which included regular weekly meetings with the KPIs, making sure we knew who all was in our business, what they were doing, where they spent their time.
So just defining what you're doing, how you're doing it, where you're at and your progression and stuff like that.
Exactly. Without those measuring tools, you just really you're flying blind.
Yeah. You're winging it.
You're winging it, to use that airline expression. So that was a big deal, and that took about a year and a half. And at that point, said, okay, we've got some possibilities here. We've grown organically to like 180 at this point. So we have some opportunities here. We could grow a little bit and see kind of what's going on. So at that point, I was like, okay, we need to be visible. So we're in a small we're in Northwest Georgia. We're in Greater Chattanooga, but we kind of have a corner on the market of the corner of Georgia. Because there wasn't anybody else based in that area. So it was kind of like an afterthought for a lot of people.
Right.
Which it turned out to be a strength because, you have 10 or 20 property management companies in Chattanooga, so they're all kind of competing for that downtown market and some of the other tertiary markets, whereas we were like, hey, there's not a property manager within 10 minutes of us. We know this neighborhood and that neighborhood and that neighborhood. So it created a good sales pitch, but I needed to make people aware of that. So we started getting involved with the RIA, the real estate investment groups that around. I know you guys have a lot of them in the Atlanta area and probably some in Cartersville. Chattanooga only had like one or maybe two.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, I gotta just start being in that group. So I started going there, and randomly somebody said, hey, you're a numbers guy. You want to talk about the market? I was like, yeah, sure. No research. I can research.
Yeah.
I love research. And with that, I started building out. I did this presentation and created a lot of cool charts, and some of the MLS data was really great because it'll have. I don't know what y'all's does specifically, but I'm going to assume it has some market data that you can use to try to help people understand about the market. So I did that presentation. I was like, hey, I could do this every month. It was like the great thing about value add marketing is you put out something of value. And put your name on it. At the bottom of the newsletter, it says, now it says Brand King, just, but at the time it said DK Property Management, and we've been growing, or we've been increasing rents, or we've been benefiting the local community, or here's our marketing statistics. And just something to where every time they read it, there was something talking positively about the business, kind of a brand recognition.
Right.
but tied in with the value add marketing, so that we had a 50 to 60% readership every month. So we had 100, 200 people, but like over half the people that were sent read it or opened it. I can't guarantee they read it, but they opened it. Which in terms of email marketing is huge.
They're interacting.
They're interacting with your brand. And that it's not a fast moving thing. Something like that, where it's not a sales function, it's more of the marketing side. Mm-hmm. But that started getting some of the rumblings going about who we were as a company and what our skills were and who we were as an entity. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of the next step to get some of that moving. And then coronavirus happened, and everybody heard what that was about. Yeah. And so everybody was a little nervous and quite a bit scared. And even some of the newsletters I read from that time, and it's like, hey guys, I don't know a lot about this coronavirus, but like, it seems like it's going to be a big deal. Yeah. We're not going to meet this month around, the regular meetings and blah, blah, blah. So that was a whole ordeal. But then, June, July, my parents were like, hey, we're ready to call it quits. The manager was leaving, the property manager that kind of the business originally had been built kind of around, was leaving. So I was like, hey, I found my friend Christopher. I was like, hey, come with me. We need to build this business up. So then he came in, and I've never in my life met somebody that was so administratively inclined. Mm-hmm. To where this man in Atlanta,
just a born leader,
like you hear bureaucracy is like this negative term, but he made it not a negative term. Mm-hmm. He's like, no, we got to build something that works for people.
Right.
And he was the absolute best at that. And I basically, because he was so good at that, he was able to work inside the business and do it to the level I was never even able to dream about in terms of operational efficiencies. And then I became just the sales focus of getting people onboarded. So he was building out an even better merry-go-round.
Right.
While I was out saying, hey guys, come join our merry-go-round.
Yeah.
Here, let me get your hand. Let me get you onto the merry-go-round.
Kind of the showman. Like, hey, yes. Look what we got. Look what we provide for y'all.
Exactly. So the newsletter was a big part of that. At the similar time, I built out something called we just had as the rent calculator. But one of the most common things, and you'll know this from real estate, is people call property managers, hey, what do you think this would rent for? Mm-hmm. So getting that rent calculator to where people could actually get their own rent estimates for the local community, that was huge in terms of building out, because when you're trying to build a property management business, you need property owners to know who you are, you need realtors to know who you are, and respect what you do. And even some of the local real estate community, such as Section 8 office or those groups, which we didn't really target as much, but getting those types of things where we really focused on value add to the community. That rent calculator was one, the newsletter was another. Yeah. The investor groups that we did, we started sponsoring some of them, but we've really focused on education. So our investor groups that we would meet up with had, an investor insurance person come in that talked about how to make sure insurance is up to date and for what you need. And then we had an accountant come in like, hey, here's 12 tax tips for real estate or for investors and how you can save more money and mitigate your blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And just all types of like real working practical professionals, not no gurus. We didn't have gurus that come in and say, hey, I can teach you how to retire by the time you're 7 or whatever.
By the time you're 7.
So that just really pushing value out. And even anybody would ask, and I'd be like, here's everything you need to know about property management. Mm-hmm. You need to do this, 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 and this. And I always encouraged people to know as much about property management, even our customers, know as much about it as possible, not because I needed to protect it and hold it in, but because I knew at some point, if I could help even the 1 or 2 owners that probably needed to self-manage, if I could help them grow to 5 or 10, they're eventually going to run out of steam in terms of being able to self-manage. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that was another factor in terms of like, let me push out as much value as possible because that will help them grow into where they need us to help them reach the next level. Because once you have about 10 units, you actually have enough usually to quit your job at that point. Yeah. If you've done it right. And now it makes more sense for you to spend time finding deals.
Yeah, yeah.
As opposed to
sitting there managing all this while trying to find new ones and dealing with everything that goes on.
Leaky toilets and tenants that know how to look good on an application were some of the scariest parts of our customer base, what they had to deal with. So it was a big deal. And then, from there, we just really started growing. At that point, it wasn't even as much organically. It was more intentionally. So we went from like 180 to 250. And then right before we sold, 2 years after I bought it, we had hit 350. So we had more than doubled, or about doubled from the time I purchased it till we sold in about a 2 year period.